Canvas app translations, you want a drop-down, so when you click it, it translates all of your text into a different language. I'm talking labels, option sets, even lookups to a different list. And we looked for other solutions online, but can't do option sets, can't do lookups. They require a bunch of syntax. But my friend Trevor found a solution that uses a reusable component, and we're gonna show you all of the code and exactly how to use it. So stay tuned.
The first thing that you're going to do is to put in a language switcher. So let's go over to the on start. Let's set var current language. Language function returns the language that the user has defined in their browser. So I'm going to say that my code is that and my value is English. And then I'll add another one for code is FR and value is say. This is defining just a couple of languages that I have. So with that, I can come into my container and I can insert dropdown. And for my items, I'm going to choose my languages. For my default selected items, I'm going to choose to filter var languages on code equals var current language. Okay. And then the last thing is that on change, when the user changes this, I'll update that var current language. So set var current language to dropdown canvas 1. That's the dropdown. Selected code. Okay. So let me come back into app and run on start just to pick up those values that I've added. And now I've got a dropdown that allows me to switch between French and English.
For the rest of this video, you will need to get the code for the component in Trevor Mills' GitHub. While you're there, make sure to follow Trevor on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in more Power Platform advanced training, check out our free training. It's 30 minutes. The link is also in the description below.
We've got a language switcher, but it's not wired up to do anything. So it's at this point that I would introduce this reusable component that I've created. It's available on my GitHub here. In here is a component directory, and there's a translation component right here. All you need to do is you got to copy this one. And we're going to add a new custom component to the app. So come into components here. You've got to add new component and then just right click here and paste. I'm going to paste the code. That creates the component that I want. I don't need this one anymore. So that's a custom component. It's not yet in my app. The way that you add it into your app is you insert custom component. What I recommend doing is to rename it to something short. Just T, that's just for brevity. So we've renamed the component just to T. There are a couple of properties in here. First off, we need to tell it what our current language is. So I'm just going to come in here and pass in the current language that we have. And then we can start using it right away. So we have not wired up any translations yet, which is kind of a common use case by simply wrapping every single string in this pattern. T __ translation demo. So it still returns that value. So if I come over to T, this has another input property called translations. And this is just a sample table here. But we can actually update this to have translation demo and then demo de traduction. So if I come into here now I can switch between French and English, and I've got my translation. That's all fine and dandy, but of course you're not going to want to maintain your list of translations in a property. So let's get this working with a SharePoint list. I have a SharePoint list over here. It's already been populated with translations. I have a title and a title FR column. Let's get this into our app and wire it into the component. So back over to here, we're going to go to data and we'll add in some new data. SharePoint. So we'll find our translations list. There it is. And we're just going to add that in as a data source. Now we've got that. All we need to do now is pass this in. So instead of it being this hard-coded table, we can pass in the name of our translations table. That's it. And now, if we go to the app, we should be able to switch and see it.
And the reason this worked,
the component has another input property called language schema. And this is where you're going to define what columns it's going to look for. So I've got two entries in here, one for English and one for French. And I'm explicitly saying when the language is English, take the value from the title column. When the language is French, take the value from title FR. And those correspond to the 2 columns here that contain the translation.
Okay. Awesome.
But what I can do now is start to update these labels. So I can come over to department, same thing, display name. So all of these, I would come through and start adding them all in, a city, etc.
And look, it's just translating on the fly.
Yeah, because it has those in already. There it is, Phil. And if I go back over to here, switch back to English, they are back there. I've got a real simple app here connected to a SharePoint list for people. This department is a lookup field into another department's list. And then I've got a handful of choice columns here as well. One difference that we have in this one is that there is an other option. So if it's not other, then you don't see that field. As soon as you choose other, then it shows up that way. And then we have these last 2 columns, which is favorite color and then a more specific color. And what I wanted to do here is show that you might have a cascading effect on your dropdowns. So if they've selected yellow here, then their more specific colors are from the yellow colors. And if they select blue, then their more specific colors are from the blue colors. Fast forward, and now we've got all of our labels done. But we do not yet have our choices translated. So this is just a regular straight up choice field. I have choices that exist already here. Here are the provinces that I have. Notice that the group says provinces there.
Trevor, some of these are blank. Like, obviously, British Columbia is going to be Columbia Britannique, but what about Alberta?
So the French word for Alberta is Alberta. So there's no difference in that. If I leave that blank, the component will just default and fall back to the original language one. Let's go ahead and get that data source into the app. Go to SharePoint, and now I can add in my choices. And the same thing that I did for the translations, I can do for choices. So there's a choices list here. And again, this is just like a default value that's there, hard-coded, but I can change this to be my choices table. I'm using this form here because choices itself is actually a Power Apps function as well. So Power Apps needs to know that we're talking about the data source here. In order to make that work, you've got to make a couple of updates to your drop-down field. So by default, that's what SharePoint gives. You're not going to use that anymore. T provides this function called __ choices. And then all you do is pass in the name of the group that you had over here. So provinces. So
a group is like a tag. So if we keep scrolling, if I want fruits to be a dropdown, I imagine I'm going to see something called fruit. Oh, there it is, fruits.
There it is. Back to our provinces here. Let's go over to this British Columbia one. And so all we've done so far is update the choices. And I just want to show what's going to happen here. So I can switch it now to French. And it looks like it didn't change, but in actual fact, I do have the French provinces in there, but it still thinks that it should be defaulting to this British Columbia one, because that's what's coming from the people list. So I've updated the items property, but I also need to update the default selected items property. This is going to be you're going to do a filter on title equals this item dot province dot value. So this item province dot value is the choice value that is coming off of the list. That's going to be in the original language. T choices provides this property called title, which itself is the original language. And what this does is this says, give me the choice that I have currently selected. That is basically what this is saying. So if I come into it now and I choose one of the languages that was translated and I switch to French, now it's showing Colombie-Britannique.
So if we didn't do that, what would it have shown? It would have shown the English version?
Exactly, yeah, because the original of this is parent default. So let's move on to this favorite fruit. That was the one that had this concept of other. First thing that we do is we update the items to be choices fruit, okay? And we go over to the default selected items and change that, okay? So now we've got it. And in fact, you're going to see, let me just go and show you these lists. So here's the fruit here. You notice there's this column here, is other, and this is just a checkbox field. What that does is it sorts other to the bottom. So here's this one. The visible on it before was whether or not this value was other. That was how I did it when it was just going off of the list properly. But now I can actually do it based on is other. So underscore underscore choices returns that is other as a property of its record. So we've got it. So there's other selected. And this other fruit data card has a visible property on it that I am setting just to the value of data card 5, which is my favorite card dropdown, the item that's selected, and then whether or not the is other property on that is true. If we switch this over to French, we can see what that value is. So you notice the value property of it now is the French one.
Cool.
Okay, but let's look at this preferred colors piece. That was the one when they've chosen one color that it'll cascade down to this more specific color and show that property. Here are my more specific colors, and I have related the group for the blues back to the ID that blue has. So blue is the ID 15. These ones are color underscore 15. Red is ID 16. These more specific reds are color underscore 16. So if I come to the more specific color, I'm going to, now I can go to T underscore choices, and it's going to be, color underscore data value 6, data card value 6 dot selected dot ID. Now it gets shown to that. So let's go over here and update default selected items as well. More specific color dot value. Okay. And now if I play, if I change this to red, I only have the red ones in there.
And then if you hop it over to French.
Yep. Let's do it. There we go. And there they all are.
Amazing.
Now, Sean, there's one other piece. If we want to save it back, there's one other thing that needs to get updated. So under the data card for each of these choice dropdowns is an update property, and that defaults to just the thing that's selected. Now we can actually see what that is right now. It's this whole value, but the value in it is the French version. We don't want to save the French version. We want to save the English version of it back. So what we do, replace this with a record shaped like this. Data card value selected, and then put the title in there.
Got it.
So that will then save the English version back. I have this vertical gallery over here that's showing the values. You notice that these aren't translated yet. So I'm on French. These are still showing the English version. So to do that, instead of showing this province value, I'm going to do a lookup of T choices provinces where title equals this item province value. And then the string that I want to get is value. It's updated to the French version. Choices provinces looks like this. And we have value is always the translated value. Title is always the original English value. So we're doing a lookup based on the title, the original value. We have this other field that is a lookup field into a departments list. And for this one, I specifically made the title of the translated column something different. It's not that title FR, it's French title. So if we want to have a drop down, we actually want to create another instance of this component in here. I'm going to create another instance of that. This one I'm going to call T underscore departments. We can get that data source in, data source in of departments. So again, the language is going to get set to var current language. The choices in this case is going to get set to departments. That's the column that's the list that I care about. For this one, I'm not even going to bother setting translations. We're never going to use this one as translations. We'll always use T underscore underscore. So for that one, I don't actually care. But I need to make a slight change to the schema because, again, the choice column for this one is not title FR, it's French title. So here is the departments list. Title is my default English one. And the column name for my French translations is French title. So T underscore, oh, not T underscore, it's T departments underscore choices. And this time you don't actually even have to pass in a value. If you don't pass in a value to this, it'll just automatically bring back all the choices. So that's what you want for this in this case. Your default selected, again, we're going to update that on filter T departments choices based on this one. It's not the title that we're matching, it's the ID equals this item dot department dot ID. So we're doing that filter there. And that should be enough. And in fact, you might think that it is enough. And I'm going to go over to here and I'm going to go back and forth between English. There it is. And I'm going to go to French and you're going to see it does not actually work yet. To fix it, we actually need to go back to the component that we have here. And we need to make a slight change to the default choices that exists here. What we need to do in order to make this one work is we just need to add French title, and it can be an empty string. Doesn't matter what's in there. But the fact that we've added this as an option in our record, as a column in our record, means that it'll get picked up. So let's go back and see if that works now. So we can come back to here, just refreshing the screen will help. And now when I come into here, I've got those. And if I switch over to French, I've got
Very cool.
French versions there.
Nice.
Say we wanted to add a new column to this table. This is something that's happened after the fact and we need to get in and do it. Let's add a column like a file upload column. So an image, a photo, we'll call it. All right. And now we can come back over to here, go to data, people, and refresh. Let's switch this back to English. So now we can come over to our form, add in that new field. Photos there, and it going at the bottom is fine. So again, what you're going to want to do with your translations is you want it to cover anything that's a string. So here in the data card, we're going to come over to here. Now, we'll have to unlock to change properties under advanced there. The display name, instead of coming from the list, we're going to change it to __ photo. And there might be some other things for the list or that are strings here. So this tap to add or click picture is the text of this add picture thing. So I can come in here and wrap that in the string as well. Go over to the translations table and just add in an item for that. We add photo and we'll just call it le photo, and context is default. That's what we want. And this guy. So let's do that. And we'll add in an item there. And I don't know what it is. I'll just put the word le in front of it. Okay. And now if I go back to here, refresh the data source for that. Now I should be able to switch between French and English. There.
Wow. What's the point of that long column?
So you notice that this translations list has these long and long FR columns. What that's used for is, say you had something that was a little bit longer, had some HTML markup in it. So let me just add something like that into here. So I could add it into my top bar there. Let's add HTML text. I'll move it up. We'll put it in the middle. And the value for this would be T _ intro text. So that key that we had there, and now we've got that showing up in here. We're French there. We would resize that obviously, but English, and now it's the English version.
Whoa, this is sick.